All right, welcome folks. Another Wednesday night. I think this is our 6th one in a row now. Techthusiasm live streams. We've covered some pretty cool stuff, I think, so far, and we keep going on Wednesdays through at least through Christmas time, up to Christmas time here. So Mr. Dan DeCarlo is back. He was with us a couple weeks ago. Dan was actually over a couple days ago. We were swapping out some gear here in the Pyle Theater, and I had an idea that I proposed, which was, why don't we work up, or why doesn't Dan work up a handful of systems over different price points, and let's break them down on a stream, take some questions about them, maybe discuss some of the options, alternatives, and what makes a good kind of integration at different levels. What does spending at different price points get you? So that's going to be the main topic for tonight. We got 4 systems between 5K and 55K. We'll roll through those as we collect folks here. Welcome as you're coming in. Please hit the like button, drop in a comment, say hey, let us know where you're from. And if you would, let us know kind of like if you were building a system from scratch, like where would your initial price point fall? Where would you be? Would you be inside this $5,000 to $55,000 kind of spectrum? Would you be beyond that? Sound off in the comments, give us some feedback. And of course, as we go, feel free to ask questions as we kind of break some stuff down, chat for a while, have some fun, and muse on different home theater builds. So, Dan, why don't you give an introduction to yourself?
Okay, sure. My name's Dan. I've been an integrator for somewhere around 17, 18 years, and the field has grown so much in that time. It's turned into something a lot different than when I started, but we've had to roll with it. So we're always having to learn, new things. And as you know, technology is moving a million miles an hour. So never quite done learning and growing. But at this point, we got some pretty cool stuff we can offer, and it's a fun industry to be in.
Sweet. So when we were talking about the ideas, we were debating kind of certain price points to hit. And of course, you were making them based on your business, I think, and some of the brands and the offerings that you have. What are some of the key brands that you often build around, or you often kind of go to for people's systems, your recommendations?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we do offer a fairly wide range of products, but not everything. So these are going to be the brands that we use all the time and that I know are really, really good value for the money. So anything in a similar price range, I feel like we're going to be competitive with just about anything that's out there. But Triad speakers is a big one for us. We really like that brand because even their budget starting, small speakers are really great sounding speakers. And then they're a very customizable brand. So we can do a lot of different shapes and sizes and configurations, custom paint match. So they really are a good brand for us to be able to serve almost any budget with. We do have a few other brands for variety and for, specialty things as well. We've really settled on liking the Marantz product line for receivers. And again, there's a few others, but that's a kind of our main line. Again, the same thing. They've got a fairly small starting point all the way up to something really substantial and luxury.
Especially now.
Yeah, I know they've really upped the game this year with what they got coming out. So for pretty much all of our controls, we do Control 4. We talked about that before, but that's a really comprehensive smart home system, even if it's just a small controller and a handheld remote. It does a great job of simplifying even one system in one room, and it gives you the ability to grow and add a lot of really cool things. And it's pretty close to the price range of other remote control systems, which is just a remote control. Whereas the Control 4 remote control with a little controller is a smart home hub. So you can add things like thermostats, lighting, shades, door locks, a lot of cool things, even if it's just in one room. So that's kind of our go-to for controls. We kind of prefer Samsung TVs. They have a great lineup of TVs, and a lot of our builders and designers are asking for them. So we stick a lot of our jobs with Samsung, although we are a dealer for the other main brands too. So there's a kind of a time and place for all of those. As far as projectors go, on the starting point, we normally will use an Epson. Down at the low, the low end of the price spectrum.
Entry level, yeah.
They're a great, bright, pleasing looking picture with, they come with some nice, like a bundle package right at the entry point, which comes with an extended warranty, an extra lamp, a ceiling mount.
Oh, cool. So
they're a great, low end of this price spectrum projector. As we move up, we usually go to the Sonys, and they can go up and up and up from there. So we've got a couple of those in there. I'm sure there's a host of other little things we have in there, but
yeah,
those are kind of the main brands.
So we'll see some of those pop up in the systems. I think I did glance. So Dan he did some workups for these 4 systems and kind of sent them over in a list. So we'll kind of pull those up on the screen and talk through them. I was debating whether, like, do I want to look at them? Like, should I just kind of be surprised? And I'm like, no, I should probably at least take a little bit of a look, have some preparation or some thoughts in mind. But I didn't dwell a lot kind of on what I thought about any given system. So it'll be, we'll kind of.
I knew you would take a sneak. I knew you'd take a sneak peek. You're a researcher.
Yeah, right. A little preparation is good. So welcome everybody as you're joining. Sound off in the comments. Hit the like button. Say hey to the folks. Hey, All Tech Geek and all the enthusiasts out there. Robert and Woodworker 5255. All right. Well, let's jump in. So we'll go smallest to largest, I guess.
Yep, that sounds good. And so to start off with, I mean, there's so many variables and so much customization you can do with all these. It's definitely not this is just a starting point. So even when we design a system, after I've talked to a client and we've gotten an idea of what they're looking for and basically what their budget is, this is almost always just a first draft. Yeah. So at our starting point here, we just kind of go through what we have there.
Yeah, let's walk it down kind of quick, and then we'll talk.
I'll start everything by saying there is a few things that are not included in here. I want to be fully transparent on the whole thing. Where the equipment's going to live, stuff like network connections, power conditioning. Oftentimes that's going to be in a rack that's also serving other parts of the house. So it's kind of hard to just come up with that without a specific job we're looking at. So those are a few items that would definitely need to be added. I threw some cables in here because I know we're going to need some HDMI cables, but I basically have this, the 2 TV systems we have for these pre-planned systems. You have a medium-sized HDMI that's going to, run somewhere locally, but that could easily be swapped out for something where the equipment is hidden far, far away. So those are kind of just placeholders. And also install price was, it's kind of impossible without a room to look at to ballpark. So I just left that kind of stuff out, but everyone needs to remember there's a few items that, definitely would have to add to this. This is the core of the system here. So,
for sure. Definitely. We could probably preface, there's definitely some syntheticness here. Yeah. And things would you definitely would want to tailor, elements of a system to a specific room need and all that. So absolutely, this is definitely very, very baseline. Right. But, still, I think a great talking point.
Absolutely.
And a matter of like kind of what can you get at different price points and what changes and how does the system, it evolve? Yeah. So
this would be kind of like a family room, an entry level system into something really nice. So something above, a regular TV and a powered speaker bar. Yeah. So what we have here is, and this is something I don't think probably a lot of people will have seen, which is kind of why I want to put it in here. But we're starting with a really nice 4K QLED TV. This is a 65. Prices on the TV are as of today, but they're going to change. Like I was telling you before, about every couple of weeks they go up and down a little bit. But at this point right now, it's unbelievable what you can get for $16.99 on a TV. Yeah. Really bright, really thin. The Samsungs have anti-glare screen, outstanding colors, and outstanding brightness. So, kind of in a living room with windows, this is a great TV to go with. Although you could absolutely sub in, your favorite TV right in here, and there should be something in this price range at 65 inches from all the main brands.
For sure.
So what we have here is this Episode amplifier is something a little unique. So Episode is a brand. There's a large company called Snap AV that now owns, a lot of other brands that they've bought and kind of brought into the fold. But Episode is their house brand. It's only available to contractors. So you will not see a whole lot of advertising or retail presence with this. However, they've got some really nice problem-solving pieces. This little amplifier is one of them. It's a small amplifier that's probably about the size of a very small, like DVD player size. So it's thin and it's kind of rectangular, and it's kind of meant to fit in a back box behind the TV if it has to.
Okay, so it's real integrated, yeah.
Yep. So this would be where we want to do more than just 2 channels, but we don't have a lot of room for equipment, or for whatever reason we want a small starting point. So this amp is made to go kind of tucked away behind the TV if it has to, or with the equipment. It's made to sit in a back box, so it's got the proper type of ventilation and heat sinking to be able to sit upright, in a somewhat enclosed vented back box behind the TV. It's got fairly low power, but it's pretty surprising how loud this thing can drive speakers, especially 4-ohm speakers.
Yep.
And it's just a little 5-channel 5.1 amplifier receiver. No bells and whistles. It's got Dolby. It will decode. I believe it'll decode Atmos, but it's got Dolby Digital and surround. It does that automatically. It does not have a remote control. So this one's actually meant to be used with the ARC connection on HDMI from a TV.
Okay.
So basically how we would set this up is we plug the HDMI in. We would use the TV for all the streaming apps, or with a game console plugged in, or something real straightforward like that, or if your preference is an Apple TV or something like that. How it's going to work is the ARC is going to control the receiver. Excuse me. And so when you turn the TV on with its own remote, or with an Apple TV remote or whatever, the TV is going to tell the receiver to turn on. It's going to lock on to the Dolby stream, and it's automatically going to go to its 5.1 channel mode. Volume is going to also be kind of chained to the TV. So your volume, your volume controls on your TV remote will tell the TV to turn up, which is in turn telling the receiver to turn up instead of the TV speakers. So this guy kind of automates himself. One of the reasons I had this on the entry level system is we didn't really have the budget to do a nice, custom program remote control. So this kind of gets you past that. Now, if you had a lot of sources, or you're doing, something more straightforward than just maybe a cable box or streaming apps and maybe a game console, we would outgrow this guy pretty quick. But for a basic room like that, it really does a pretty nice job on sound quality, and ease of use is just there's nothing more simple.
Yeah, I like the idea that if you're so again, that's the, I think you understand a value of integration, or a benefit of integration, kind of versus taking a whole bunch of equipment potentially and putting it together, and when it might not be as simple as it might want to be for, especially for like an entry level system. So the idea of sticking to ARC and CEC controls, using the TV apps, sticking to the TV remote is a good way to go at that level.
Yep, it's pretty straightforward, and it's pretty easy to use. Our company policies, we try not to ever leave people with a coffee table full of remotes. So we're trying to get you down to one remote ideally, and this will get you there at a pretty good entry level price. So there's a subwoofer out as well. So in this system for speakers, we've got just the kind of the little babies of the Triad line. What do we have on there? Let me refresh my memory.
Yeah, Triad Mini.
Okay, so the minis are real small little satellite speakers. Traditional bookshelf speakers, or you can get these in an in-wall version. I believe you can get these. You can get something close to this in an in-ceiling angled version as well. So I just have 5 identical speakers going in here. Those could be either bookshelf or in wall. What's really cool, even at this price point, is the bookshelf speakers. You can do custom paint matched, and of course the flush mounts. If you went in wall or in ceiling, the grill would be custom paint matched as well.
Okay. Yep. There it is.
So yeah, it's like, and I may have said this last time, but Triad speakers are pretty understated. They don't look flashy, but they're excellent sounding speakers. And like I said, we have all that customization available to us. So this is kind of like the equivalent of your home theater in a box. 5 identical satellite speakers, and then we've got a powered sub in this one, which is also from Episode. So Episode makes speakers as well. We will use them from time to time. The thing we use the most from them is their subwoofers. They've got really excellent subwoofers. Again, no retail presence, so not too exciting. You know, it's nothing you're gonna run across in a big color ad in a magazine. But they really do the job well. The price is great, and on my end of it, that company supports us extremely well. So they've got usually better than average warranties, and we have a really no hassle warranty through them. So we get any kind of problem within warranty, and usually they're just shipping us out a brand new unit. So that's also important. I can't support my customers very well if I don't get supported, but we get really excellent support from Episode, who's owned by Snap AV. And I will give a plug to our local Snap AV distributor, which is AllNet in Troy. They got a great staff, and they support us extremely well. You know, if we need them to sometimes jump through hoops to get us something in time, or to figure out something that needs to be dealt with human beings, they give me fantastic support. So Meredith and the crew, you guys are awesome, and you help me, deliver some decent amount of custom service myself.
Nice. And that sub they have in-wall variants as well too.
Right? They do.
This was an in-room though.
This is a little in-room.
Little box. Okay.
Yeah. So this is just a little black or white cube powered subwoofer, very straightforward. Since you brought up in-wall subs, that is something that we will do from time to time. I am very particular about where we put in-wall subs, only because the subs themselves are never a problem, but moving that much air out of something that's attached to the wall, I've got to be very confident that the wall is screwed and glued and everything is nice and solid, because we can get into a lot of unwanted noise with in-wall sub pretty easily. So that is something we will do, especially if we're trying to problem solve and pack something into the room that doesn't really have a lot of space. But I'm real careful about that. For sure. It's no fun tracking down those unwanted noises. We had one or two in your house way back, and we pinned them down, but we can avoid that.
I still feel it sometimes. The metal grills on the Focal with the Focal IW LCR 6s above the subs, and those are Triad subs. Those are the bronze 8s, I think they are.
They're probably bronze 6s
or 6s. Yep. So even though those metal grills are magnetized, and nothing is ever truly plumb, nothing's ever truly square. Right. So the magnets grip, but the right tones I can hear those rattle a little bit. And I've still always had the problem where, and it probably would be the same with an in-room sub versus the in-walls, unless the in-walls coupled to the structure a little bit more. But I'm pretty sure what I hear is it's the gutter outside.
Oh yeah.
And I say it every single year. Now we're getting into wintertime again, and I'm probably not going to be inclined to do it. Is I get my butt out there on a ladder, rumble it outside, and listen to what's shaking, because probably just a nail or a screw in the right spot will take care of that forever.
But Jeremy, have you ever done a slow sweep from 20 hertz up, where you either have it in an app or anything, and you can go up like one frequency at a time?
Yep.
Because that
hit the note. Yep.
It's amazing. Everything has like a resonance frequency that will start it to move. And if there's enough mass to it, it won't move. But all kinds of things in your room, everything that's not bolted down will at a certain frequency just start to sing, and it's kind of crazy. So that's a great way to find those noises and screw stuff down. We use museum putty all the time. That's that blue, looks like silly putty, but it won't damage painted surfaces or anything delicate. Felt under things, and it's just a lot of pinning noises down and muffling them out with something that absorbs it.
Yep. So this first system then, $5,300, 65-inch TV, 5.1 audio with a receiver. There's probably not any advanced room correction in that episode.
There's not,
but I'm sure you tune it for some crossovers and some
yeah.
basic.
So how you set that one up is it's got a web interface.
Perfect. Yep.
And it has no remote control, no on screen, but the web interface actually lets you do all the channel leveling, real basic EQ, and there's a couple modes you can turn off and on.
Nice.
To kind of tailor the sound. So this one is really meat and potatoes basic, but it's pretty good sounding for what it is.
Oh yeah, I'm sure that would utterly destroy any home theater box or any general sound bar, certainly TV audio.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a pretty good little thing. Now, we didn't talk about it, but because the TV has all this stuff too, but I believe there's AirPlay and Bluetooth in the little episode guide. But generally, okay. once you're at a newer smart TV, it's easier to do that on the screen and get the the feedback on the screen. But anything you feed the TV is going to go through that 5.1 speaker system, so you can definitely use it for music. We generally just leave everything in 5.1 in something like that. Although an end user absolutely could log on to the web interface and change modes and tweak or whatever they'd want to do.
Yep, if they want to run 2-channel versus just upmix or whatever.
Right. So yeah, pretty good little starting system, I think.
Yep, I agree. All right, let's take a look at the next one. So here we're going up to 15K. So while we were chatting about this, we were debating a little bit. Okay, how many of these should we do? First of all, figuring it's going to probably talk about one for 15-20 minutes, and we don't want 10 of them be here all night long. But between 5 and 50K, like, where would be some breakpoints? And also kind of thinking, like, not necessarily setting them arbitrary, like just double 5 to 10 to 20, like to 40, but instead, what would you really put into it? And is there a point where, instead of arbitrarily doubling 10 to 20, should we go with like 27? Because that's a point at which you kind of break past or something significant changes. So for the next one, we've got 15.
Yeah. So Jeremy, you were nice enough to give me free reign on the price points. So basically what I did is I just kind of started stepping up in performance, size, and appearance, and then some features too. And what would be logical to move up from here if we had a bigger budget. So this one is still probably more so of like a living room type setup, although this could absolutely go down in a dedicated room. But so some of our upgrades here is we went up to an 85-inch TV. And obviously TVs, whatever size and whatever type of TV, you swap these in however you want. But with a little more budget, we would definitely try to do a bigger TV. This one is one of the 8K TVs. So people, I'm sure, will wonder, what am I going to play on an 8K TV? Because there's not a whole lot of content. There's not really anything streaming at the moment. So what is available in 8K is there are some home video cameras that shoot in 8K. So depending on, if that's the kind of thing you do, home movies or any kind of video production is available in 8K. And then, as gaming systems are, the latest gen gaming systems, a lot of that is 8K capable. So now for regular things, Netflix and, and iTunes and whatever you're watching, the big difference with this TV, if you're not actually, it is an 8K panel, so everything that goes into it gets up converted to 8K. So your pixels are much more dense on an 8K TV, and I call it pixel density or color density. Things look a little more solid on the 8K TV than the corresponding 4K TV. It's a subtle difference, but where it's a bigger difference is, at least in the Samsung line, when you go from the 4K line up to the 8K, they go from having a couple of processors in the TV, which is basically the computer that decides, what content and how it's displayed on the TV. Instead of having a couple multifunction processors to decide all those things, it goes to, a whole handful of individual processors. One's doing black and one black and white, one's doing motion, one's doing, up conversion. So the TV itself performs kind of at its best, even with 4K or 1080 content, because it's got so much more processing horsepower. That's actually kind of more important than going from 4K to 8K, at least on the Samsungs, in my eyes.
Okay.
So you get to something that really handles different content and fills out the screen, as good as a TV in this price point can, or at least among the best ones. The Sony X1 processor is another one that's just phenomenal at all that processing and horsepower. Yeah. So that's kind of where we're at with the TV.
Yeah. That's like you said, TVs, there's so many choices. So you could break a lot of ways. But I could also presume too, like if we're talking about a system at this level, at this budget, if you put it in a dedicated room, it's probably a smaller space. Let's presume as well, you're probably sitting closer to it. And also, probably at this price point too, looking to buy some stuff that's going to stick around for a while. So if you're going to look at a 5-year lifespan on a TV, who's to say what sources might be out there in 3 to 5 years from now? Yeah, for sure. Versus other folks that might flip equipment more frequently. So somehow they keep upping streaming data. And as that goes up, resolution will go up with it. Yeah. So it is, it's nice to get something that's gonna be relevant for as long as possible. So anyway, that was the thinking on the TV. Yeah. At this price point, we're able to go to a legit home theater receiver from Marantz. This is one of the new ones, the Cinema 60. That's not quite their smallest one, but this is probably the one that's definitely our top seller for a living room system, or for probably for the bulk of the rooms. If I don't, if we're not asked or we don't have the budget to do something where we're, really getting into a larger, more high performance system, this is kind of the go-to. So this is what do we have that at here? That's like about a $1,700 receiver. Yep. 60. Yep. This is a 7.2. So that's what's driving this room. So not only is that a lot more power, it's more, it's got a lot more calibration and customization capabilities. So this comes with Odyssey, which is a really nice free room correction software. If anyone's out there and they've got a Marantz or a Denon or anything that has Odyssey in it and you haven't done the calibration, it's absolutely worthwhile to spend 30 minutes and do the calibration. For Odyssey itself, you do have to buy like a $19 app. Yeah. And that unlocks the much more comprehensive version of Odyssey. And that is also well worthwhile. So we calibrate these on every job. I do run into jobs sometimes where there's all this great calibration stuff. And, for whatever reason, the customer or the dealer never ran the calibration. So that's kind of that's a big red flag to me. The calibration is great. And, there's obviously more advanced calibrations as well. There's an Odyssey. Yeah, Dirac, which Marantz is going to get this year. The stuff the Anthem has. I mean, there's a bunch. There's also an Odyssey Pro that you can buy a license for, which costs several $100s, but that unlocks an even more advanced calibration with Marantz receivers, and it uses a legit mic instead of kind of the pack-in mic. So there's an upgrade even there that's available if somebody wanted it. So moving up from there, we're adding a Control 4 remote control from here on up. Yep. So this has enough components now with the receiver and the TV and whatever sources you're going to use, where we definitely want a custom programmed remote here to make it easy to use. So the only thing that I have in here that's not full retail price, they're, depending on who you're working with, they may be able to give you a package discount. I just used full retail on this for comparison purposes, except for the Core 1 SR250 bundle. That I do have discounted just a bit because we offer those, as an alternative to some of the other remote control systems that are in that price range. And I wanted to keep this one, under $1,000. Nice. Okay. So this is, from us, we would do this package
about $100 off retail or so.
Mm-hmm.
So if anybody's looking at retail prices, that's the only thing that I think that we have that I'm pretty stubborn on showing that discount. I believe Control 4 would definitely want us to have something very competitive with the other remote control systems.
Got it.
So now, as we go down this list, this is a 5.2.2 system. So for anything with 7 channels in a traditional, somewhat square room, my strong preference for how to divvy up those 7 channels is, of course, 3 in the front. Your one alternative would be, side surrounds and rear surrounds.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be, your 7 channel, 7.1 or 2. If we have the ability to do Atmos speakers, I think the best configuration you can do with 7 channels is 2 Atmos speakers above you, but skewed a little bit forward. And then for your rear speakers, I would love to do those either pretty much in the back corners of the room down at ear level. And the reason being is the way Atmos moves sound around, having your surround channels down at ear level will give you the up and down movement of sound.
Mm-hmm.
And rather than doing, side speakers and rear speakers as the surrounds and with no Atmos, with that, you're still kind of locked to moving sound in one plane around you like this, which is really cool, but it's not nearly as cool as having, that dimension going up.
Yep.
Because now objects can be placed anywhere inside of those speakers. And since we are only doing 2 surrounds instead of 4 to wrap around you, I feel like we splitting the difference and getting them kind of behind you and also to the sides of you. So like the back corners of the room
mm-hmm.
at ear level gives you the most amount of, being able to let the sound move all, in as much space around you as possible. I think that's kind of the sweet spot. So the 5.2.2, 3 in the front, 2 surrounds in the back corners at ear level, and then 2 Atmos above you.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's your best configuration for 7 channels in most rooms. Now, in some rooms, we're not able to do, we don't have walls or anything like that. And everything has to go on the ceiling except for the front speakers. In that case, we would do Atmos in the same positions up above and skewed a little bit forward. And we would do your ceiling speakers all the way up in the back corners of the ceiling rather than down at ear level, because that still gives you side to side and rear movement,
mm-hmm.
but also, the Atmos up above you.
Yeah, I think we can presume, there's always compromises, and generally the more money you're probably spending on a system, ideally the less compromised things would be. So at this level, we're still talking about a TV-based system, probably a higher likelihood that this is going to fall to a living room than a dedicated space. And if you don't have much space behind you, like rear surrounds are probably one of the hardest to place, particularly in a living room. If you really don't have room behind, or if somebody is unfortunately, got a couch up against a wall, they're not able to pull away from it at all, let alone pull away from it in a way that lets them put speakers behind there. So it's probably an easy position to give up
right.
on in most cases,
mm-hmm.
or give up on first, I guess.
The currently in my family room, I'm doing the 5.2.2, where I've got bipolar surrounds behind me down at ear level and in the side walls,
mm-hmm.
and I got the Atmos above. I'm always adding stuff, so that probably won't stay that way for long, but I think that's a really good way to maximize how much sound can move around the room with
mm-hmm.
just 7 channels.
Yep.
So in this front channel, I have from Triad a speaker called the Nano LCR 3.0. So that is a speaker bar, which is not like a sound bar where it's a powered speaker. Mm-hmm. This is actually 3 traditional high-end compact speakers that are built into a long and very slender cabinet. So there's actually 3 speaker inputs for LCR. This gets powered. I mean, you can just picture this as 3 really high performance bookshelf LCR speakers, mm-hmm. just in a different form factor. Right. They have somehow made this speaker just over 1.5 inches thick. So if we're putting the Samsung, 8K TV that's a little under an inch thick, and we've got it on just a little bit of a mount so that there's room for a couple of wires to pass behind it, but it's basically hugging the wall. This speaker will be the same distance off the wall, and it can tuck up tight under the TV because of the way it mounts in a really creative way. And most people would not even really notice that there's a speaker there.
Yeah, it'll look all like one.
It looks really nice and tight. If we are mounting this on a wall that's painted a certain color or even white, we can get this speaker in any color. So sometimes we'll get it in white to match the wall and it really disappears there. Sometimes you're doing this above a fireplace and there might be stone or some other color and we can match it to that, or we can just keep it black to match the TV. You know, we let the customers, you know, pick what they like the look of better. But the speaker performs really well and it's in that really slender package. So, you know, again, I'm kind of envisioning this system is still in a family room rather than a dedicated room.
Yep.
And this is a great way to hide really high quality front speakers in almost invisible package that really performs well. So past that, we've got the Triad bronze satellite speakers. Now those ones, you know, I'm envisioning these are going to be in ceiling if at all possible. And those are the ones that even though they're flat and flush, they're angled back inside of the speaker. The baffle actually angles down at the listening area. Triad recommends this rather than putting a speaker right over the top of your head, pointed straight down. They like to see this speaker used and push a little forward because the frequency response is so much wider, you know, at a nice even level when it's coming out of an angled speaker like this. You're able to keep really good frequency response for a larger area instead of just that one pinpoint area that's right below it. So we actually get really good coverage for Atmos in a speaker like that.
So we're looking at, it's this guy, right?
Yep, it's that guy right there. So that would be going up and in the ceiling and pointed down right at you. And since it's angled, we're able to push it a little further forward, which couples really well with surrounds that are behind you. So that's kind of our preferred setup. So with any speaker brand, though, whatever your preference is, you should be able to find ceiling speakers that angle. And this is kind of a good trick for any speaker brand is instead of going right above your head, you skew them a little bit forward, but they're angled back at you. And it gives you a bigger sweet spot for smooth frequency response. It also, I think, doesn't have such a big disconnect with your front speakers. So, they're a little closer to the front speakers, and then your rears are hopefully a little further back. So you're spacing everything out a little more evenly. So when Atmos does its thing and starts moving sounds around, I think it does a smoother job, when the speakers are laid out a little more evenly instead of the front's way gaps at the front, big gap, and then you have some, right on top of you, and then right, close by to there you have your rears. So that's kind of the thinking on that one. The rear speakers are I
think we lost you. Lost your audio. I think we lost. Somebody in chat can let us know. Things went quiet on me, and I don't know. We're both speaking. Can you hear one of us and not the other? No, I don't hear you, Dan. Can you hear me? No. Hear you. So they're saying hear you, not him. I'm assuming to me. Yeah, I lost Dan's audio. Yeah, maybe try reconnect. All right. We'll get it. We'll get it logged up here, fixed up here in just a second, I hope. I have to reconnect.
Okay, can you hear me through this?
There we go. Yep, you're back.
Okay, so this isn't as good, but I got something going on with the Bluetooth earbuds right now. But as long as this is nice and clear, I think we might be okay.
Yep. Cool.
Okay, great. So I'm sorry, where did I leave off?
No worries. We were talking about the other pair of speakers, or the last pair of speakers in this setup, the bronze surrounds.
Okay, yeah. So when we can only do one pair of surround speakers, these are bipolar in wall, or we could do these in ceiling as well. But with bipolar, you've got two tweeters kind of aiming away from each other, and that helps you simulate there being more speakers back there instead of just two. So kind of it diffuses the sound and spreads it around a little better, because when we're trying to play back movie soundtracks, which were made for a big theater, if you've ever looked back at the sides and the rear, there's sometimes, a dozen or more speakers along each wall and the back wall. So we're kind of trying to replicate that, that big enveloping wraparound channel with just two speakers. So this one just helps us spread it around a little more.
Yeah. You see a lot of recommendations to go monopole nowadays, but that goes along with the idea of like 9.4.6 systems, right? Many speakers. When you're covering your sound field with a massive quantity of speakers, that's different than trying to cover a soundstage with a smaller quantity of speakers, I guess. Yeah,
that's right. And as the room gets larger, it still becomes impractical to use as many speakers as you would have proportionately like a movie theater. So like if you picture a 20 by 20 room, you'd still probably need, 3 or 4 speakers on each wall and, 5 or 6 on the back wall. And that's just not how things work for a home. So, Triad's design department still recommends for ear level side surrounds or rear surrounds, bipolar as being the best choice. So there's also dipolars some companies make. The difference being, bipolar has those two smaller woofers. They're both in phase, so they're both playing the same thing. So this is kind of a happy medium between a regular monopole speaker and a dipole speaker, because a dipole would have this same shape, but these speakers would be wired out of phase. So what that does is if you're in between the two speakers, the sound cancels itself out, and you mostly only hear the speakers that are going, or the sound that is coming from the speakers is going further away from the speaker. So it kind of simulates having a speaker on one side and one on the opposite, and nothing in the middle. Which was great for Dolby Surround when we really wanted to unfocus that sound and make it sound like it was coming from all over. But a bipolar is kind of a happy medium between the two. It spreads the sound out a little bit more, but it also is, still a little bit directional, because it's nothing's canceling any sound out.
Got it. And then the last piece, bronze sub dual with an RA700.
So
pull this up.
That's one you're familiar with, isn't it? So that's a single Triad subwoofer amp that's going out to a pair of subs, and it's made to drive the two subs. And these ones, what I was kind of envisioning here is still in a living room system, and we want to do big subs, but we don't want to have them, these two giant black squares in the room, where somebody wants it to look nice and clean. So you'll see the shape of these is, more upright and flat. These could probably tuck behind a couch, or they could tuck behind a plant or something in a finished room. There's the, they're not nearly as deep as a traditional sub, and they're also available in custom colors. So we've done these several times where we got them painted the same color as the walls, and they just kind of went, kind of in the corners, somewhat out of sight, but because they're the same color, they don't really attract much attention.
Yep. And again, so and they can do that, slim them up, because the amplifier's not in the subwoofer.
Yeah, exactly.
it's with the rest of your gear.
Triad subs are kind of cool. They all go down, to at least 20 hertz. So even the little, there's even a size smaller than the bronze. Whether it's in wall or in ceiling or in room, they all go down to at least 20 hertz. And what you get as you go up is you just get, loud, a little bit deeper extension, but mostly they'll just play so much louder and move so much more air. So you don't really, what I love about Triad is you don't really sacrifice a lot of quality as far as frequency goes, as even with the small speakers. It's all pretty high quality sounding. You're just sizing it to either the size of the room or how loudly you want it to play.
Cool. So if we summarize this one, we've got it basically as big as of a flat panel as you can get now. Effectively nowadays, of course, they have 100-inch OLEDs and stuff, but that's that's a different echelon. And we're talking 5.2.2 dual subs. So and with a receiver like this, you'd be able to fully EQ them and and sound manage all of that, upgraded on getting into the controller. And so this can really grow as well by having the automation system. You could, if you were in a dedicated room, you could add some lighting and you can add some other things to it over time and build up more, potentially add some other speakers. Although I guess we're not going into external amplification or anything like that here.
No, not yet.
Cool. I just want to hit the, not a whole lot of chat coming through, but with one question here. Advantage to running full range speakers for rear surrounds, meaning not smaller speakers, I guess, or keeping them larger.
Can I share my controversial view on this?
Yeah, absolutely.
In a multi-channel system, I don't feel the need for full range speakers ever, front, rear, or otherwise, because we're trying to duplicate the what's in the mixing stage of a movie production studio, and 0 of those use full range speakers. It's always mixed to use subwoofers. So a couple of the advantage there is no tower speaker is going to equate the amount and the depth of the bass you get from multiple subwoofers. The other problem with tower speakers is you absolutely have to position those where they perform best for the sound stage and for the mids and the highs. And once you get those, pulled away from a wall and in a position where the mids and the highs are just right, you've put your two, low frequency drivers, which are the speakers built into the towers, in two of the worst places you can possibly put them in a room, which is out away from the wall, out away from the sides. So you really compromise bass when you try to do them out of a tower speaker of any kind, in my opinion. Now, this is not how everybody does it, but being able to position subwoofers where they need to be to kind of equalize the room modes and the bass response at where you're sitting, you have to be able to get them into the corners and move them around there a little bit. Plus, you get much more extension. Plus, you're able to put your main speakers exactly where they need to be without thinking about the bass. You just can't do both of those at the same time, in my opinion. And now once we get to multiple subwoofers, as you can see, this room has 2 subwoofers. Anytime you're serious about the sound, you're going to want at least 2 subwoofers, if not 4. Now, they don't have to be 4 monsters, but the thought being there is if you put if you only have 2 subwoofers and you can put one in the corner of the room and maybe one, somewhere where you tune it, and you're using that second one to smooth out the bass response at multiple seats. Because with one, you're going to have worst case scenario where certain seats are going to be flat, certain seats are going to have certain frequencies bumped way up, and certain are going to have other frequencies canceled way out. So in a closed-in room, it's really hard to get good bass response at all with one subwoofer. You can make the best of it for the money seat, is about the best you can do. As soon as you get 2 in there, you start to equal out some of those peaks and valleys in the frequency response in a larger area, so more people can have really good bass where they're sitting. Now, if you have the budget and you can add 2 more subwoofers, and they don't have to be big, they can be much smaller, and you put those in 4 corners of the room, either, top or bottom corner, but, the 4 corners of the room, that allows you to completely equalize the bass everywhere. And you get outstanding smooth bass response at pretty much the entire room. Again, none of which is possible if your speakers are full range, where the channels have to be for their mids and their highs. So sorry for the rant, but this is where I may be opposite of, some other dealers and, certainly a lot of end users, but I think your money is much better spent with speakers that go 80 hertz and up for all your main channels and multiple subs.
Especially when you got to make choices with those dollars, right?
Right. And then, as I'm sure most of your listeners know, bass response at low levels is fairly non-directional. So you may get a sense that it's coming from, one area of the room or not, but you really can't, your ear can't tell that, that speaker back there is full range.
Mm-hmm.
You're just getting a lot more weight. But the soundtracks weren't even really meant to play full range like that. So we're really trying to replicate what they had in that mixing stage.
Nice. All right, let me reshare and let's look at system number 3. So I think we went to 30K here, or just a hair over 30K.
I was under budget on the last one, but I went a little over on this one.
I'll balance it out. All right, so this is really stepping up. Now we're talking home theater space. We're into projectors. We're into some different system elements for sure here.
Yep. So this room is assuming we have a dedicated room now. So we're going to get in a front projection. The only difference at the top is I put a longer HDMI in there, just, hoping that would work just for a placeholder. But here we're into our first front projection system at the lower end of the budget spectrum. The Epson is, I feel, a really good dollar for dollar projector. And here's going to be another design preference, which may be different depending on, who's designing the system. I find there's only certain people that are really hyper-focused on having a really good picture versus a really great picture. It's just something most people aren't attuned to as much as they are the sound. So when I've got an overall budget and nobody's telling me I want a great picture, they just, they kind of want everything balanced. I feel like putting a little bit more budget and performance into the sound is going to be something readily noticeable by everyone. Everyone who walks in is going to be blown away by the sound. Whereas, you have your friend over and he looks at, an Epson projector or something at, 2 or 3 times the budget. That's going to be a more subtle difference that some people wouldn't even notice. Now, I'm not talking about Jeremy and some of the guys on this this channel now, because you guys are hyper focused on video formats and the subtleties of playing back really high-end video. But for me, I've got a wide range of customers, most of whom are not delving into things as much as you guys who are really into the hobby. So for me, I went not overboard with the part of the budget that went to the video on here. That's kind of why we went with something a little more reasonable on the video, and then we kind of amped up the audio a little bit here. Yeah,
well, even 5K out of 30-ish is certainly ample, and I would say too the 12,000 is no slouch to me. Like a budget projector, is something probably under 3, maybe 3,500. So this is. I almost feel maybe you're underselling it a little bit. Like this
okay, right. Well, it definitely is it's a good problem to have, between a $5,000 and $10,000 projector. But
for sure.
Unless somebody's asking me otherwise, I'm usually going to skew a little heavy on the audio because I feel that's very noticeable.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Yeah.
So the at this price range at $5,000, the brightness and the really exciting style of picture that the Epsons have, I think is great. Like I said, they come with a bunch of the goodies, extra warranty, lamp, ceiling mount, all packaged together. So, that's a little bit more savings there. they're really good on the on this one. We've got picture presets for zoom and focus and all that. So if we want to, if we want to zoom out and go with a wider screen, and be able to do the Cinemascope, we're able to do that right off the remote and or the Control 4 remote here. So that's something you don't often get at $5,000 and below. Usually you don't have presets. So that's another kind of trick they have in the bag. I am noticing, remember how I said I was under budget? I forgot to put in the Control 4 remote on this one. So I think we're back to budget on this one. But this should have a Core 1 and a handheld Control 4 remote to manage everything. We got the Seymour screen. I know you've talked about that a lot on the channel. That's an outstanding screen company. Builds everything right in the United States here. So screens is another thing. There's a bunch of good ones out there. The Seymour is great. The Stewarts are great. The house brand for Snap, Dragonfly, are actually really good screens as well. At this point, you could go 16:9 if you did a lot of standard like TV viewing and sports and stuff. 16:9 might be a good choice. If you do a lot of movies, or even if it's an even split, you can get this screen in a Cinemascope, so the extra wide, and that would then you'd be able to at least zoom up and get the black bars off the screen and watch the wider image. So that's something you can do with this system here. We have in times past made some inserts for where you watch 16:9 on a Cinemascope screen, and then you have the black letterboxing on the two sides. We have made some black velvet square panels that press into the screen or magnet in, so that if you're doing a all day football or something, and you don't want to have just a screen there projecting black, you can put something black that absorbs the light and really makes it look like a 16:9 screen. That's pretty inexpensive to do, because we don't have the budget to do a multi-format screen. But you can still kind of get some of that functionality out of this. Marantz Cinema 50 receiver, so we're bumping up in the line. They did a weird thing this year where the lower number is the bigger receiver, so they're trying something new. So the 50 is actually the step up from the 60, and this one jumped up to more power, more channels, so that jumps up to 9 channels. I believe you can add amplifiers to this one and get up to 11, if I remember correctly. So we're doing the receiver for that's a 9-channel receiver, but here's a little trick we can do to bump up performance. You'll see there's a 3-channel Parasound Halo amp. So why would we put an amp in to a receiver that has all its power already? So the thing about receivers is, even though the Marantz receivers are designed really well, especially the amplification, not everything's coming out of all shared components. They've got multiples in there, but the main part in there that's delivering the power is still shared between all 9 channels. There's only so much it can put out at any 1 second. So by offloading the front 3 channels, which are by far the most demanding of the 3 channels, and letting those be powered off a separate amplifier, which in this case would be the Halo, does a few things for us. Number one, it gives us quite a bit more power for the front 3 channels, and the front 3 channels are king. If you can treat those better, if you have to treat speakers or channels better in the system, the front 3 channels should get the best treatment. They should get maybe bigger speakers and maybe more power, because that's going to be a noticeable difference. So we're throwing a lot more power at the front 3 speakers. That allowed us to bump up to an even larger front speaker. So we're doing the silver LCRs in here instead of the bronze, which is the rest of the package. And everything is still, with Triad at least, everything's still voiced similarly. When you go from bronze to silver, you're actually just going up in size. So we're putting some mix them. Yeah, you can definitely mix them. We're putting some preference on, larger speakers and more power up front, where it's going to make a lot of difference. By doing this, we're also offloading those 3 demanding channels away from the receiver. So now the power is able to deliver to all the rest of the Atmos and the surround channels is going to be a lot greater. And it's actually going to make those channels sound a lot more dynamic. So because you're sharing a lot of components inside a receiver, if you can take some of the workload off, what remains will actually perform better and sound more dynamic and sound louder. So it's kind of a big bump up in performance for the entire system, not just the front channels, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, for sure. The transitional step is as one moves from a receiver to separates, that's the stopgap for sure.
Right. So if your budget only allows you to do some of that, the front channels is the way to separate out into separates. And this is a pretty good workaround for doing the rest of the channels. It's going to bump up the performance of the whole system. Now on this one, I squeezed enough out of the budget to do the upgraded front 3 channels, but we're still doing bronze sized speakers for the rest of the 6 channels, which is going to either be a pair of Atmos, 2 pairs of Atmos and a pair of surrounds, or reversed, 1 pair of Atmos and 2 pairs of surrounds. This kind of depends on the shape of the room and seating layout. If this is going to be multiple rows, we might want to do side surrounds and rear surrounds to really give the enveloping surround channels a bigger area to cover. If this is just a single row, I think what I would probably do here is front Atmos, just like we talked about before, a little skewed forward, another pair of Atmos skewed just behind you, and then ear level back corners for the surrounds. Kind of, this you could do either way, and the price actually stays pretty much the same either way, than a couple $100. So that would be dependent on the room itself.
Yeah, even with these numbers, you could even go for the whole 7.2.4 and still be clicking in under 35.
Yeah,
even with the additional control 4 as well, if the space and locations allow it. Yeah,
exactly. So on this one, we used the episode subs. So these ones in particular, I really like. It's their mega line of subs, and that D10 stands for dual 10. So each one of these actually has a pair of 10s. Don't be afraid of the 10-inch size of the woofers. These actually play unbelievably deep, and I'm not even really clear. So that's the single one. That's the S series.
Okay.
So it would be the D series we're looking at. The dual. The dual series really is a great performing amplifier, powered subwoofer. That is. They've designed it in a way where the subwoofer itself almost makes no vibration whatsoever. You can almost put a wine glass or something on top of there and not even barely see ripples. Whereas most subwoofers are a little more alive. So if you have to go in cabinets, these are great because they hardly move at all. It's just air around them. And it has to do with the way they
the dual
design the 2 subwoofers with each other.
Yep.
They really reinforce each other and go deep and fast. And this is a great sounding sub. These ones do have an app that lets you do some amount of pretty basic room correction for the subwoofer itself. So if we were calibrating this system, we would kind of dial in the subwoofers first, and we would let them do their own room correction. And once that's done, then we would do the Odyssey or the Dirac. And in this one, we've got enough budget to do some acoustic panels here. So I have about 5,000 of this budget going to acoustic panels.
Yeah. So that's a really interesting ad, I think, and speaks to the importance of treatment, right? Versus taking $5,000 and throwing it into more gear, or doing the panels, doing some treatments and investing that way. It gets more out of the equipment that you're buying, probably better results than just buying next level equipment and keeping things untreated, right?
Right. Yeah, it's acoustic treatments can make the whatever the budget of speakers sound like the next one up for sure. And then you can throw as much money as you want to into speakers, and if the room has a lot of acoustic problems, they're never going to sound great.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely something to look at.
With-
So, you know, we use Kinetics. There's a bunch of great acoustic panels out there. I know you really like the ones you got.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, honestly, GIK needs to step up some of their quality control. I think I've been disappointed, happy with the performance, and I'll say too, like we used this room for 6 months when I in the original incarnation 4 years ago, when all the equipment was up, and when we put up our first movie, we ran it for a while before I put the treatments in, bass traps and the panels on the side and all that stuff. And it sounded good. There were moments though, particularly like I remember watching Aquaman, and it was terrible. Like there was no control of the space with the deep underwater pressurization and all that stuff of Aquaman, particularly when he goes up against that big creature when he gets his trident, and like the room just felt like a Wild West of audio. And then after we put the panels in, I rewatched that scene, and everything was just so much. It was impactful, but it was clean and tight, and it didn't make you want to leave the room, basically. Right. So it made a huge difference. But
focus would be the word, right? It brought all the speakers into focus, right?
Yep. Everything just like locked. Yep.
And then real important for vocals as well. So human voices is something we're so attuned to hearing, you know, what we determine as natural sounding or not. You know, when the frequency response is not right, mm-hmm. You know, you really hear it clearly in human voices.
Yep. Yeah. So I agree. Like bringing that piece in. That's the first time that I've ever really treated a space, or that I've used, because prior to that, I mean, it was living rooms and mm-hmm. so on. But yeah, I was astounded by the difference the treatments make. And Kinetics does like some level of guidance or like system design with you, right?
Yeah, they'll run a reverberation software when you send them the blueprints of the room, and they'll basically tell you exactly where panels, you know, which panels need to be where. So they'll send absorptive and diffusive panels. They look the same, but they'll kind of lay out exactly where they should go. And then, you know, that, and there's some general principles, you know, you can learn about pretty easily. But yeah, they'll do free design. And then the panels themselves are built per order. So you pick the fabric, you pick the edges, you pick the sizes, and then they will make the panels for your job and ship them out.
You had sent a couple of pictures. Let me share back and pull these up from one of your projects, right?
Yeah. So this was early on when we were just getting the panels hung. So those are 2-inch acoustic panels. They look the same, but some of those are absorptive and some are diffusive. There they are from the side. So you pretty much need 2 inches in a room to cover a wide enough frequency range. The only danger with panels is if there's not a lot of design going into it, you can absorb too much of a certain frequency range, and that can cause as many problems as it fixes. Mm-hmm. So 2 inches generally needed to get into the lower down into the bass region, at least like the lower mids. And a 1-inch panel generally will only treat like high mids and up, and that can cause a weird response.
Yep.
So, and then on this one, I taught, anytime we do a projector, I try to toss in a little bit of lighting control. So just like your room that you did, we'd program when the projector comes on, lights dim down slowly. When you turn the room off, they dim up slowly, lets everybody's eyes adjust. And we're trying to make sure the lights are off when the projector's on. And then after that, of course, you can adjust them to whatever right on the remote. Whatever level you want to, but as a starting point, we like to get the room nice and dark when the projector turns on.
Cool. Yeah, if anybody has questions on these systems, ideas, substitutions, whatever. Fire them away. Couple that had come in here. Chadman PAC, regular welcome back. This is why the newer brands have 4 independent sub outrights. Yeah, so it's awesome. How many now like receivers, processors are like for more of a full blown home theater setup are getting to be 15 channels and do 4 independent subs without having to go the extra route of mini DSP and all kinds of other extra tuner things. Julius asking about Anthem stuff. Beside being able to support 4 subs, does it make sense to upgrade from a 70 to a 90? Hear no improvement of sound. So I haven't heard a 90 myself yet, or bought one, but I pay keen attention to the owners threads where there's a variety of conversation between 70 owners and 90 owners, and to me, I see a recurring story where folks may have done like a home theater bypass mode and had like an Anthem AVM 70 and maybe a high-end or 2-channel type processor and gave them both up to switch over to the 90 because they felt it delivered the combination of performance for music and home theater all in one. And I would hope at some point to make an upgrade to a 90 here and pick up a couple more subwoofers, but we'll see. Maybe a 2023 endeavor.
So the 4 subwoofer calibration is ideal. I mean, that's great. If you've only got 1 or 2 or even 1 sub outputs, you can still use the 4 subs and calibrate manually. Mm-hmm. And there's a procedure for doing that. It's pretty much your main subs, you get those at a level that you want, and you have to level them out with each other. And we would do this with just an outboard SPL meter. So we would actually play the tone and adjust the sub until we get, everything equaled out. Triad has kind of a setup procedure for that. So the 2 smaller subs that you use for tuning, they're supposed to be 3 dB quieter than the front. So, once we get, a baseline in the front, we calibrate those relatively 3 dBs lower. So they don't actually really contribute much to the bass response that you hear, but that allows their frequencies to mingle with the front and even everything out. And even that is a giant improvement over just 1 or 2 subs. So the 4 subs is ideal. Mm-hmm. Not everyone can do it for whatever reason, but if you can, that's a fantastic way to even the bass response out in the whole room. And even if you don't have the 4 independent calibrated sub outputs, it's still worthwhile doing.
Perfect. All right, so let's jump into the last system here. And in this one, we got coming in, a tad over 55K. Let me reshare. And let's go through. Really, actually, very similar to the 35K, but the extra budget really lets you power up the level of all equipment, right?
Right. So yeah, we jump up to a pretty nice Sony projector. This one, it's not going to be a ton brighter than the Epson because the Epson's really bright, but this one is going to have that Sony ES processing chip. Or I'm sorry, not ES, the X1. That's the same one that's in their high-end TVs and all their high-end projectors. So that does a lot of outstanding video processing. This one's going to have really good optics too. So probably where Sony shines is the actual glass of their lens. That's a lot of what you pay for as you get into the higher end projectors. It gets so much cleaner, and that piece of glass is actually really expensive. So the optics of the projector, the better the lens is, the less it imparts any changes onto the processed image. So that's part of what you get here. Same exact screen. So that one didn't really need to bump up at all. We didn't talk about the screen yet, but this is acoustically transparent screen, just like we did in your room. This is also a strong preference of mine. In a dedicated room, having the speakers behind the screen allows you to put the speakers exactly at ear level, and it's it's a subtle but worthwhile improvement to have vocals coming out right out of the screen, right out of the mouth of the character on the screen, rather than above or below. Sometimes we still have to do above or below, and that's a really good plan B. But acoustically transparent with the LCRs behind the screen is absolutely ideal, just like a movie theater.
Yep. Yeah. If I could go back to day one, I would have built the room that way instead of into the second revision that I did at the start of this year, because just having it this way with the AT, with the speakers behind, with everything integrated, I'd prefer it so much.
Good. Yeah, I agree. And on this one, we went full separates. So this is the soon to ship AV10 and amp 10. So it's kind of a matching pair. I got a couple typos on here because I was doing this fast, but that's actually a 16 channel amp. Yep. So they've got one giant amplifier for the whole speaker package. Even at this budget, I had to make the cut of the Parasound Halos to keep in this budget, because that's a lot of channels of amplifier. Based on how the Marantz currently performs, really solid, and then all the improvements they made in their upcoming lineup, and we have done the receivers already that have shipped. So I feel like their lineup this year is such a step forward. So I was very confident in an upcoming theater being able to quote these two guys in separates. This is actually a 9.4.6. So on this one, our speaker package is all silver.
Yep.
Except for the subs, they're even bigger. But on this one, you'd have the front three channels. We'd have side surrounds, rear surrounds, 2 pairs of Atmos. So kind of building on what we did before. So instead of making those cuts and, having 1 pair do what 2 pair could, we're going to use 2 pair in this one. And then this one, we can do front wides. So as our last, couple of channels there. We'd have ear level, further than further forward than your seats are, and angled back. Front wide are really, really nice addition. This is the last speaker you should add to your kit.
Yeah, kind of running out of places
really
to put more.
It really does help move those Atmos sounds around the room. So that's kind of how we configured this one. So 4 in ceilings, 2 side surrounds, 2 rear surrounds, 2 front wides, and then your front 3 channels up there. This is all silver, so they're the larger of the drivers, which will eat up all that separates power really nicely. And then we've got 2 of the platinum subs. So the Triad platinum subs are 18s, and they're pretty big. So we're gonna have to have a room which can have a couple of real big cubes in there. Man alive, the extension and the clean deep bass on these guys. They're still using that same subwoofer amplifier that all the Triad subs use. So on this one, though, we're doing an amplifier per sub rather than one powering 2 speaker cabinets.
Got it. Okay, bridging them
like we were a couple systems back.
Yeah.
So this is 4 independent subwoofer streams, so we can do that 4-channel calibration. And then I've got 2 these Triad Omni subs. They're just their traditional powered, subs like everyone else makes. Much smaller. They still put out a pretty decent amount of bass. Nothing that I would put in this room by themselves, but as the tuning subs, the 3rd and the 4th sub, they're perfect. We don't have to spend a ton of money on them, but they're able to hang with the big ones at 3 dB down and even out the room, especially with that 4-channel calibration. So this would be ferocious audio in this room. Really, really outstanding. I'd be extremely proud of owning this theater here. Yep.
And then on into a slightly more expensive, just a couple extra $1,000 over the last one for the treatments, and then
some more treatments in there, so even more comprehensive. So we didn't talk about it on the last one, but what you can do with acoustic panels like this, and in this room, I'm envisioning all the wall speakers flush mount in the wall. So the Triad speakers can fit in as small as a regular 2x4 wall. For all the surrounds, they're just kind of made that way. You have the option of having a smaller footprint on the wall and having a deeper speaker that'll fit in a 2x6 wall. So either of those are available for all these speakers. So they should be able to fit in any room. And if we did, let's say, for instance, the front 3 speakers are behind the screen, and then we've got front wides and surrounds, all at ear level.
Yep.
We can plan the acoustic panels to go in front of those speakers. And we basically just cut out the square footprint of the speaker of acoustic material, and the front it all looks solid, but there's actually just that fabric coming through for where the speaker's cut out. And in that way, we can completely hide all of the main channel speakers, and it looks extremely clean. There is some weird psychological thing where you don't see any speakers, but the sound's moving all over the place. It's just it's a very cool experience. And like a lot of our jobs have designers are really picky customers on how everything's going to look. So I'm always kind of trying to make sure if I can hide it, we're going to hide it. And this is a great way to do it. So the combination of the acoustic materials and the speakers, kind of make the speakers completely disappear.
Perfect.
And a little bit of lighting control in here. The custom remote. I've done all these with the standard hard button Control 4 remote because functionally it works great. It's a hard button remote, so it looks like a hard button remote.
Yeah.
This you could easily swap in those new Halo remotes when they come out, or whatever your preference is. You can do a touchscreen in here if you wanted to.
Yep. Yeah, you got the whole setup. Yeah, hit a couple comments. Ronster, love the show. Thanks, appreciate it.
Thanks.
And then Chadman. So, what size Seymour screen? So, I think size is a little arbitrary, but in the line items was about $2,100, I think. So, in a Seymour for that price, if you were in a scope screen, what size
About
does that get you up to?
130-ish.
Okay.
So the scope, if in a 16:9, that would probably be like 135-inch screen. And then in a scope, it's hard to apples to apples because the shape's different. So the diagonals doesn't really mean the same thing, but in and around a 130-inch screen.
Got it. And their prices scale pretty reasonable if you go a little bit bigger. Like it doesn't get, I don't think it gets too crazy.
So basically you're just paying for a little bit more frame material and screen material. So the price between 120 and 130 and 140, it's a pretty marginal difference. The buy-in is getting a screen at all. So getting a screen at all, you're in around $2,000 as a starting point. But between sizes, there's not much difference.
Right. And like you said too, it'd be an installation specific choice whether you go 16:9 or scope. I love having
size. Size is pretty subjective. It's largely determined by the room and the seating, but even there you got a little room to play with. A really good trick on trying to keep your price down or trying to keep your performance up is it's just a simple thing, but moving your seats closer to the screen. Sitting closer to a smaller screen is exactly the same as sitting farther back from a bigger screen. The difference being the amount of light that is spread out over that screen. The smaller the screen, the higher the light output.
Right, you're better off.
And the really critical video section of my industry, wants to keep those screen sizes small. And I agree. It definitely bumps up the brightness and the lumens of a projector.
Right.
So it's super cool to say, I got a 150-inch screen or whatever. But unless you got a really big room, if you can move closer and keep the screen smaller, not only does it knock the budget down a little bit, but you actually get a brighter picture. So it's kind of a win-win. And then if you've got multi rows, it becomes easier. So, your row that, you as the person who spent all the money on the theater should sit the closer row, get the nice bright picture. And, if the kids and the in-laws or the brother-in-laws or whoever have to sit in the back and, is not as ideal as your seat, I think that's fair.
Yep. Yeah. You don't need to be whatever, 16, 18 feet back. You can be whatever, maybe whatever, 10. 10-ish, 12-ish pull up close. And then too, if you've got constrained space, you got to deal with throw distance, and throw distance is going to limit your size. That's the problem I have right now. When I went with the one, I went bigger, deliberately bigger, because I in the long run knew I could accommodate it, and I didn't want to change screens again. So I think we did the 163 in here, but I'm about a foot shy on the JVC right now. And an NZ9 I think would solve the problem because it has a little longer focal length, or potentially in the long run flipping this room around and getting some extra distance. But yeah, those are definitely installation challenges. Stuff gets simpler if you can pull a little tighter, pull a little closer in.
And then the other kind of hack on bolstering up performance is if you've got a zoom range. A lot of projectors have 1 time zoom versus 2 times, or 1 to 2 times zoom. So what that refers to is the width of the screen would be 1 time, the throw ratio of 1.0. So if your screen is 150 inches wide, you can start at 150 inches back. And then if it's a 1 to 2 ratio, you can go as much as double as that. So on a 150 inch wide screen, your projector lens would have to sit between 150 inches and 300 inches back, anywhere in there. And the zoom would compensate for that difference. However, if you're able to push it forward and have it zoom down, you actually will increase brightness and sharpness and all that stuff. Cause the far away zoom is a problem solver. It's not really what the best option would be. So projector as far forward on a screen as small as possible gets you the brightest, most detailed picture.
Yep. Question here, Rex Cochran. In the market for a processor, consider an Anthem. The AVM 70 8K worth the 1K premium over the 4K version, just future proofing. It depends what you're switching through it. So I would say if you know very deliberately that you're not planning to switch HDMI 2.1, I don't think there's any tangible or otherwise functional difference between the two models. And I think they're blowing out the 4K chip versions of those right now. They're on like a holiday sale. I know somebody that just picked one up. But if you ever want to do it later, you're going to pay to do so, right? There's an upgrade, HDMI upgrade program going on for it right now. But yeah, there's no other difference that I'm aware of other than that HDMI board itself. So I wonder about future resale. If 3 years or 5 years from now, whatever it might be, you want to sell that off and buy something new, if having the 8K board will affect future resale. But in some ways that's probably a little too much premature optimization. And in 5 years time, they're both going to have some level of significant depreciation anyway. So yeah, that RS 3100 is a pretty sweet projector. Cool. So we're coming up on an hour and a half. If anybody has questions here, I think we'll be winding down in a little bit. Do fire off your questions on these systems, extensions, alterations. I guess one of the things that I might add in terms of extending the systems, or maybe we talked a little bit more, if we wanted to push any of them up a little bit further, maybe what would we do? And I think the one thing that would stand out to me would also be sources. So in the TV systems, it's pretty straightforward to say, particularly in the most entry level one, use the TV apps. You're probably going to be streaming. Particularly though in the projector based systems, you might want a little bit more than that. Of course, there aren't that many other source options in the industry. So we could assume though that you can add a disc player to any system pretty marginally. A couple $100 is mostly a rounding error in any of these, particularly the two projection systems. Or maybe if you're getting into that 55K system and really wanted to shoot some adrenaline into it, you could tack on another 10K-ish and throw a Kaleidescape on top. or maybe the question to ask is what would be the next on that 55K system? What would be the next thing to do with dropping some significant money on it? Would it be a Kaleidescape, or would you still do something else?
No, it would 100% be the Kaleidescape. That'd be the very first thing I would add to almost any of these systems. Maybe not the first one, but I watch Kaleidescape on a 85-inch 8K, and it's a massive difference with the level of video, and actually even more so the audio. The audio sounds so much more lively on the Kaleidescape versions of the movies.
Yeah.
That would be the first thing I would add. And then, if you're not gaming system, of course, if that's something you do, that would be a great add-on. You could definitely go for some bells and whistles, a multi format screen, that changes formats as you change sources would be awesome. Theater seating. Yeah, right. We didn't get into that because that's just, that's only something we do when it's appropriate, because a lot of our jobs have designers and they're bringing in their own furniture and whatever. Theater seating is really a big one though. If you had budget to play with, it's such a comfort level difference. So, I'm
so ready.
We've talked about the difference between a couch and theater seating is the theater seating is comfortable enough to sit in for hours and hours on end, but it's not so comfortable that you immediately go to sleep. It supports you perfectly for watching movies. So theater seating will have a low enough back to where it'll support your neck and point you right at the screen, but not so high that it's blocking out any of the sound. They recline differently than traditional seating. So instead of reclining back and laying you down, it reclines you out and keeps your head pointed at the screen and everything supported. So that's a great add-on if the room is right for theater seating. That would be another add-on we would do right away.
Yeah. We kind of did these lists really focused more around just kind of the audio video gear, but of course you would have room setup, prep, integration. There might be, particularly in the theater rooms, carpet, other wall covering, so there's other elements that would go into it.
Yeah, for sure. And we didn't really talk about lighting, but lighting a theater room or a dedicated room, even if it's multi-purpose, is there's some really nice options there. The Home Depot recessed lighting is not always going to dim very well. Sometimes it won't dim down. It'll dim somewhat, but like the dimmest setting is still pretty bright. Sometimes too bright to be useful with a projection screen. So we do carry a line of recessed lights from a company called DMF, and they make the recessed lights and some fixtures specifically for control system lighting, like Lutron and Control 4. And they'll dim down to like 1 or 2% smoothly, no hum, no buzz. So, there's some other stuff. Lighting would be one. We're just starting to roll out our first couple of jobs of Control 4 has a thing called vibrant lighting. It's LED strip lighting that's fully, white tunable and color tunable. So that's going to be something that's great in a theater too. If you look at any of the pictures of the nice theaters, almost always they've got, indirect lighting around the top that just kind of makes the upper part of the room glow, but it doesn't really shine on the screen at all. It looks nice. It's functional. So lighting would be another thing to look at in a theater for sure.
Yep. Yeah. Back on the seats. That's the one thing that I probably Jones for the most in this room. The family doesn't want them. The family is too used to just laying out on these chases and stuff, but wanting to sit more towards the middle of our space here, and I find myself totally uncomfortable and unsupported after about an hour on this, or I end up laying back so far and whatever, or I don't know, maybe 46-year-old dad, whatever, fall asleep at 8 o'clock.
Todd,
watching the movie.
Todd, if you're listening, this theater right here is screaming for some row 1 seating.
Yeah. Let's work on it. A couple more questions. How does Dan feel about using the same company amps that makes your processor? Do you feel there's any benefits to having a match, or?
Not so much between the processor and the amplifiers, but more so between the amplifiers and the speakers. So I would, we've kind of already found some combinations that I think work really well together. So Parasound, Halo, and Triad are just wonderful together. Jeremy really likes the Focal and Parasound as well.
Yep, it's worked out well.
If I was an end user trying to figure that out, I would contact the design team for my speaker manufacturer. Just call in and, try to get somebody in the engineering department or the design department, or even email them and ask them what do they think are the best voiced amplifiers for their type of speakers. They will almost always, they should all have something that, a couple of go-to brands for the amplifier. So that's a great question. But processors are more or less neutral. They can do their job better or not as good, but they shouldn't really have a real strong flavor themselves. So they're gonna pass everything along the way it's supposed to be. But the interaction between your amplifiers and your speakers, definitely, speakers have a voice or a flavor of their own, and sometimes amplifiers are more reserved or more bright, or we got all these words we try to describe sounds with, but they're definitely better combinations, and there's some that don't work great together. Like a real bright sounding amp and real bright sounding speakers together might be a displeasing combination. So I guess I would go that way. That being said, we found the Parasound Halos to be pretty forgiving and a pretty good match with a lot of different speakers. So that would definitely be one I would look at. They are wonderful high-end amplifiers that don't have the real snooty high-end, over the top pricing that some of the audiophile stuff has, but their build quality and, their performance is right up there with some of the really, really obnoxiously priced stuff.
Yeah. That was one of the things that drew me to those for sure, like the engineering pedigree.
Now, oddly enough, even though the impedance and all that matched up real well, I never felt that the older Marantz amplifiers worked very well with Triad, and I don't really know why that is, but that's kind of one of the reasons we explored other amplifier companies and landed on Parasound. For whatever reason, that combination just wasn't a home run. So there's an example of a really good amplifier and really good speakers that just wasn't an ideal combination.
It'll be interesting to see the new one come. It's all like Class D modules and such as well. That's the one thing that I'm kind of curious to try is like something new, what Hypex or Purify kind of Class D amp, and if I get a chance to get my hands on one some way or another coming up and A/B a little bit to the Parasounds and see, do I notice any kind of different tonal quality? Does it measure? Maybe not, fundamentally measure so differently, but
it's almost stuff you'll hear the difference of, rather than be anything on paper.
Yeah. Cool. Well, last call. We'll give it a last call here. Any last questions, comments? So we'll be coming up into the end of the year here on the channel. There's still some really cool stuff coming. I'm going to stick to the same schedule here over these weeks. Regular produced videos, kind of Monday and Friday. Sticking to the live streams for the next 2 Wednesdays at least. I got 2 more live stream collaborations coming up. I think next week I'll have some repeat special guests again. We'll be hopefully talking about gaming platforms and home theater. And then after that, another surprise special guest. And we're going to really deep dive Kaleidescape, pull up the Kaleidescape UI and do kind of a whole session based on kind of what I and another kind of key person in the space thinks about Kaleidescape. And yeah, mixing some other shorts and excerpts and other things like that, and then we'll see what holds going into 2023. But thanks everybody for watching.
Hey, Jeremy,
go ahead.
Should we do another promo?
Oh, throw it out there.
Okay,
yeah.
So for 2 weeks, if you want to email me, we'll do some special pricing on Triad, Kaleidescape, and Episode.
Nice.
So if you can tag my email in the comments here and pin it, anyone's welcome to email, and I can give you the details.
Cool. I'll do that. The after the video we wrap up here, I'll get it right in there this time. Contact info in the first pinned comment there. So perfect time of the year. It's spending season. Go buy some home theater gear.
Hey, thanks a lot for having me on again. Thanks everybody for joining on. Great questions, and hopefully you learned something.
Yep. Awesome. Thanks everyone. We'll see you soon.